Welcome to the Monday Recap Show here on the RotoGrinders Daily Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Sammy Reid. I'm joined here by my fishy friend Nate Nohling, and we have a special guest today. Davis is not in the house, so we had to get somebody. I mean, he's got big fins to fill, so we had to get somebody really fishy in here. You know him, Josh ADHD. Josh, thanks so much for being here, dude.
Yeah, I wish I could say more, but I'm drowning right now. I'm flopping around on the shore. My gills cannot suck down enough of this air when I'm out of the water. But I'm gonna do the best I can.
Well, I mean, you had to fill Davis's shoes, so it was expected as soon as you said yes to the pod.
Yeah, once I found out, I was like, I have to destroy something beautiful today, and I did that in grand fashion.
Davis missed the game because he had to go, or missed this because he had to be at a Chiefs game, which was at noon. So we're still confused as to why he can't make the pod 10 hours later.
He's probably still outside the locker room waiting on Kelsey to come out.
he's actually running around the field looking for Kareem Hunt, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, Kareem Hunt confirmed not at the game. That was a really interesting thing that happened here. Nate, how was your day overall, man?
I had an okay day. I mean, overall, it was a profitable week for me, which, but it was profitable without Julio, who I was high on. But it's always good when you can avoid being busted on a week where Julio goes for 50-something and you don't have him. So, I mean, I was high on Julio all week. I was talking about it. I think he was due for this touchdown regression. I think it was pretty obvious this was going to come at some point. He, like we were saying earlier in the week, he was highest in difference in expected touchdown based on where his targets were and his actual touchdown. So this shouldn't have been super surprising.
Wait, I don't get it. I mean, we were texting earlier in the week, me, you, and Davis, and you're like talking Davis into playing Julio. And
I was talking both of you into it. You called me a fish.
I did not call you a fish. I did. Look, you find the text where I called you a fish, and you put it up on Twitter if it exists, which it doesn't.
It might. I'll have to look.
It 100% does not.
It was roster construction that got me off of him. I fell in love with a bunch of 5K receivers this week that I thought had a great floor and ceiling combination. And
hey, look, man, any time you have the opportunity to jam in Corey Davis and not play Julio Jones, you just got to do it. I completely understand. Josh, how are things for you this week, dude?
Oh man, it's I tinkered myself to death this week. I had a dynamite 2 tight end combo right at 11:58 before kick, and I bailed out on it the last second, and it cost me about 40 points total. So yeah, it turned a very profitable day into a very unprofitable day in a hurry. But for the most part, process was good. I had bad results, and I've got a few things to evaluate for week 13.
Well, since you're the special guest and I believe you have the fishiest lineup of all, let's break down your lineup. I had a great weekend first off. The Steelers just won the Sunday night game, which is the thing that makes me the most happy. I put up 180 in cash despite Kareem Hunt, which is also awesome. Nate, what did you do in cash?
I had like 148, I think.
Was that? I don't know where the cash line was because
I cashed in double ups and everything. So
okay, solid.
Yeah, 147.82. So cashed in all double ups and stuff.
So Josh, the three of us have some things to talk about. You have your lineup here on screen share, which is just Davis never shows us his lineup because he's so ashamed. So first off, I have to just give you props.
And I'm pretty sure Davis rounds up his numbers too.
100%.
142. It was in the 150.
Davis probably considers any putt within 3 feet a gimme too, and just picks up, right?
Oh, that's 100% true. 100% true. So let's talk about this lineup, Josh. First off, let's start at quarterback. What did you do at quarterback, and why did you do it?
Yeah, so I went with Russ Wilson today. I thought he was fairly chalky. It ended up he was like around 55% in a lot of the smaller double ups and 50-50s that I was in this week. And I just thought that he had the best floor. He's been playing so good, just putting the whole team on his back. And with the increased pace that San Francisco affords, I thought he was probably the most sense if you're going to pay up at quarterback. I almost went to Breeze. I'm kind of glad I didn't do that now. Early in the week, I was on Wentz the whole time, and I thought that Wentz had a really good opportunity to throw for 3 touchdowns and maybe 300 yards in a blowout, and he came pretty damn close to that. But I kind of just decided Wilson was the best thing to do with what he does with his feet. And I'm not too displeased with that.
No, I mean, Wilson was the play this week. I think it's crazy. Over his last 6 games, he's averaging over 40 yards rushing, which is another touchdown to his floor, basically. And you add to that what he's doing passing wise. I mean, he's averaging over 300 over his last 6. He's just he's been crushing, and he is their only way to move the ball.
Yep.
I felt like Wilson was he scored almost 25 DraftKings points, and I felt like he didn't even the Seahawks didn't even do that good. You know what I mean?
That was like the lower end of his outcomes. Like I wasn't ecstatic with it.
Yeah. We all played Wilson in cash. I think it was a thing to do. I know a lot of people went Brissett, which in terms of roster construction, I can't hate on it. Obviously, it didn't turn out very well, but I mean, Wilson, I think everyone saw the stat before the week that he's accounting for almost 83% of the team's total yardage. And it's like Josh mentioned, when you're playing an up-tempo pace that San Francisco plays, that kind of volume share over that many plays, it was just too easy. And I'm sorry to say, if you didn't play Russell Wilson, I mean, you're a fish. I mean, let's throw it out there.
The one other play that I thought was not fish that I could see would have been Goff. Goff was at similar price ranges throughout the industry, and Goff is, I mean, they were in such a favorable spot with Lattimore and Crowley out for the Saints. So I could see, because I saw a couple head-to-heads with Goff. I don't think that was fish.
I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it was as good of a play. Although I did read something really cool today about how they're using Goff, that McVay basically always has him get to the line with 25 seconds left so that McVay can call the audibles because the headset doesn't click off until 15 seconds. That's sharp as hell.
It's a college offense, right?
Right. It's
perfect. I mean, how else are you going to give your young quarterback an advantage unless you could be in his ear for as long as possible?
Yeah,
it's
and
brilliant.
It just simplifies Goff. Obviously, Goff's playing well, but it simplifies his decision-making and really gives 2 sets of eyes on one thing, and it's just sharp as hell. And
it's sad, though, that the rest of the NFL is so,
stupid,
moronic that something like this, which is just obvious, looks sharp as heck, even though it's really not. This is just – I don't know. I just wish the NFL was more efficient.
I mean, Bill Belichick would be doing this if Tom Brady wasn't such a goat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100%. So,
yeah.
Quarterback, Russ was the play. Josh, let's talk about what you did with your running backs here, because this is where things start to get a little scaly. They start to get a little floaty. Go ahead and lay it on us.
Yeah. So again, this is something excuse me, that's worked for me pretty well this year, is going cheap at running back, because I feel like I can target the cheaper volume that has a lot more upside. I had Tevin Coleman in here almost the entire week because I thought he was just a total shoe-in play. He was. I mean, that was the right play to make this week. But at 4,800, I felt like Dion Lewis offered just as much upside and similar volume opportunity, and he was $1,700 cheaper. He allowed me a lot more flexibility. So that's why I went with Dion Lewis. And for all intents and purposes, I was pretty happy with what I got out of Dion Lewis today. I mean, he got 112 yards, and he had a couple of targets, and I think he turned those into 1 or 2 receptions. So I'm not displeased with what I got out of him at all. And then I went with McKissick from Seattle, and it was similar to the reasons I played Russell Wilson. I thought that Seattle would be ahead. I thought that McKissick would get more targets than he got. And I thought that the up-tempo pace that San Francisco affords us, again, would offer McKissick a little more volume. They didn't work out that way. I mean, one thing that I noticed is that San Francisco kind of plays down to their competition level inside the division. And it's weird. I can't really put a finger on it. Maybe it's just a divisional thing, but
it's very Steelers-esque. Only the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're in this total hammer spot where they just destroy San Francisco, and they go and they just play this total crappy game, and they let Russell just shoulder the offense again. And they're giving Eddie Lacy touches still. I think he had 10 or 12 touches today, and just it doesn't make any sense.
It's egregious.
It's just madness. And so I thought McKissick had a lot more volume upside than obviously he got today, and it didn't work out for me. I'm not upset at 8.6 out of McKissick at his price, but for a lot of the week when I had Dion Lewis in this construction, I also had Mixon in here at 4,400. And if I'd have just left my stuff alone, like I talked about earlier, I could have had Mixon in here getting his, 20-something points today, and my lineup's a lot better. So, obviously I got some things to think about in that regard.
Now, Nate, you played Mixon too, right?
Yeah, so I was on Mixon pretty early in the week I struggled with the Tevin love as much as some people did, and we talked about this earlier in the week. I thought that Hyde and Mixon, both at lower price tags, were a comparable play from a volume standpoint to Tevin. I think a lot of people got super excited about Tevin because of, obviously, with Freeman and everything else like that being out. But Freeman his concussion was on the second play of the game 2 weeks ago. So we basically had a 2-game sample of what Tevin's workload would look like, and he wasn't getting targets. He had a total of 3 targets over the past 2 games, and we saw it again in this game that he didn't get 1 target. And so I just have a problem with playing on DraftKings 6.5K for a running back who's not going to get targets. And I thought Hyde had the 1K discount and had same amount of rushing share, but had a massive amount of target projection, and he did. Hyde got 13 targets this week, which I don't know. I just feel like whenever you can get 7+ targets out of a running back, you got to play that.
Now, I know you don't really factor in volume more than anything else, more than matchup, more than touchdown projection, but the projected scores, the implied team totals for San Francisco versus Atlanta was a pretty significant difference. How much of a difference does that make to you when you're evaluating somebody like Hyde versus Coleman?
I can pull up my projection. I think Hyde had a 0.3 touchdown projection or something, where Coleman had a 0.6, where it's you multiply 0.3 by 6 points. That's basically what I would account for the difference in touchdown projection. But I just think when you have to rely on your running back to score a touchdown to make value, it's a tough spot. Where Tevin had a touchdown in 3 straight games and still hadn't eclipsed 15 points, which is, for me, just a limited ceiling to pay for in cash.
So Tevin obviously smashed. He did really well. He got in the zone twice. I ended up getting off him too because of you, because of this whole thing. I think it was the right play. I don't know, man. He
had 2 touchdowns and he still only put up 21.7 DraftKings points.
I know.
0 targets. He had 97 rushing yards. I don't know. Do you really want to play a guy who's going to be he has to have 2 touchdowns to hurt you? I'll take that bet 9 times out of 10 that he doesn't get 2.
My assumption is that the targets for Coleman were a little lower than they should be. Coleman's proven himself a capable receiver. They throw to Freeman a lot. I didn't see why that would really change. But
over the past 6 games, Atlanta's not targeting their running backs as much anymore. I don't know what it is with the play calling, because Atlanta's doing some fishy stuff with play calling regardless. But I don't know. I think 2 touchdowns and getting 21 points, I'm okay with that. If that's what it takes to beat me, that's what it takes to beat me. But I'll take the diversified workload 10 times out of 10, which is what Mixon and Hyde both had.
So I ended up going with both Mixon and Hyde and then Kareem Hunt. Did you have those 3 guys also, or did you?
I got up to Gurley.
Okay.
Especially with the concern about Brown, and so I thought Gurley was going to have more workload. So I got on Gurley this morning.
Let's talk about Kareem Hunt for just a second here, because this was an absolutely smash spot. The Bills had just been demolished by running backs each of the last 3 weeks. They've been destroyed. The Chiefs have been cold, but they were a 10-point home favorite. Josh, what do you make of this situation, man? How does Kareem Hunt end up with 3.6 DraftKings points? How does this happen in this spot?
The only thing I could say is that, and this is something I noticed today, the last couple of weeks watching that offense, is it's Alex Smith has turned back into Alex Smith. He's a pumpkin. And when he's a pumpkin, that offense doesn't go anywhere. Right? They can't manufacture Kareem Hunt when Alex Smith can't throw the ball downfield and locks on to 1 or 2 guys that are, 8 yards from the line of scrimmage right in the middle of the field. It doesn't happen. So, if anybody could lay an egg in this spot, it was certainly Kansas City. And that's what got me off Hunt early in the week. It was the price and the fact that they stunk out loud in New York last week in a smash spot, right? They should have destroyed New York. And they went in there and just totally stunk, man. They stunk bad. And I thought this week, okay, well, I was thinking narrative, they're going to come back here and they're going to be mad after they got their butts kicked in New York last week, and they're just going to destroy Buffalo. And I kept looking back at the old film and looking back, and it smelled bad to me the whole time. That run game smells bad right now. They couldn't beat Dallas with it. They couldn't beat, New York with it. And now they can't beat Buffalo with it. That just tells me their offense is just flat out broken. And it's one I'm going to avoid until they show some signs of life.
So our official fish rankings right now, I think that Andy Reid has to be number 1. I think that Davis Maddock is number 2. And then I think I'm probably number 3 because I played Kareem Hunt. I mean, unfreaking believable, Sammy. What? I feel so stupid. Like, how can I do this? It's just
here's
bad.
The thing, though. I don't think it was as bad as it seems, because you're not. I think weeks 1 through 5, what people were chasing with Hunt was fishy. People were chasing all the big plays and all these other things, which weren't going to be consistent. Now we're seeing the volume. He's had over 20 touches 3 weeks in a row, and that's what you were playing him for this week. Is you knew he was going to get the volume. Yes, there's been questions about the efficiency of the offense, but that's something that I'm not going to bet on time and time again, that this offense is going to turn into a complete pumpkin, after 10 weeks of the season. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think it was as fish. I get it's easy to rip on it, but like, he had 3 straight weeks of 20+ touches. Like,
okay, so let's jump onto a little tangent here and talk about Alvin Kamara, because Alvin Kamara is a guy that's not getting a ton of volume. He is being enormously efficient. Right now he stands to be, and there's still season left to go. I think Graham Barfield tweeted this, the only running back in NFL history 75+ carries in a season to average 7 or more yards per carry. And he looks amazing. The Saints are an amazing running back spot, but the guy's only getting, I don't know what his average is, 14 touches a game at best. Like, Josh, what do you make of Kamara?
He's like Anton Smith on steroids.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And that's part of why I haven't played him at all this season. It's just because I keep waiting for that efficiency to go off a cliff. It has to at some point, right?
It does.
But it doesn't. That's the thing. It doesn't. Every week you think he's going to drop off a cliff, and he comes right back and he hammers home a 70+ yard TD, and you're just like, the hell, man? When is this gonna progress to the mean? It hasn't done it yet. So that tells me that he's either just this completely special athlete that is put in these specially leveraged situations every week by his very smart coach and his good offense and his line around him, and he's just going to continue smashing because he's in a spot to do it and he can take advantage of it. But I look back at some of his plays and they seem kind of fluky a little bit. It's like the TD catch he had last week where he bobbles the pass against Washington, and the bobble just totally freezes the defense. And I'll claim it and just run in the end zone and going to be really pretty much unhindered. And I haven't seen the replay of his long run yet today, but I'm sure I could look at it and dissect it and say, okay, well, he had a few things break right for him here. And, let's say 9 times out of 10, that's not going to work out. So again, I keep waiting for the regression of the mean. I'm sure the week I play him, it's going to happen just because that's how I roll. But it's at some point you just have to accept that maybe he's a special player in a special situation and not worry about the touches anymore.
Nate, throw some cold water on this. I know you're just going to downer this whole thing up. Go for it.
I mean, the dude had 5 touches or 5 rushing attempts and 6 targets and ended up with 40 DraftKings points. I will put any amount of money on the fact that this efficiency will not continue. He's averaging 1.4 points over expectation to what every other running back since 2000 has done. I get that over a 4-game sample he's done it, but I hope people continue to play him and that he doesn't get more touches, because this is exactly what was happening with Kareem Hunt for the first 4 weeks. Everybody's like, he's going to do it. He's going to break a 70-yard every game. And it's no.
And Chris Thompson too, to a lesser degree.
And it's literally he's 1.4 points above expectation for every and so this isn't going to continue.
Yeah, what do you think the Z-score is on something like that? I mean, it's astronomical, right?
Oh, he's 4 standard deviations above
at least.
And so what I'm saying, the only thing that would concern me is if workload starts to shift, because that's the one part that gets tricky, is if all of a sudden he gets more touches, then I might, shift more towards him. But I think Ingram's going to still get the workload. I think, it's easy to look at this and go, oh, this is so much fun. But it's not going to continue.
You know what's crazy is though, like this is really outlier too, because New Orleans only ran 49 plays today that weren't special teams plays. That's very outlier. So, the thing that the Rams did to them today was they kept them off the field. So, we look at 11 touches for Kamara, and it looks like Ingram had how many? He had 13. So they had 24 touches between the two running backs, where the prior weeks you were looking at probably 40-plus touches between the two running backs. Mm-hmm. So it's,
one let's say that I look at most to make sure I'm factoring in the amount of plays is overall offensive share. So I look at team rushing attempts, team passing attempts, and then rushing attempts and targets for the player. And he had 22% of the team's offensive share of plays this week, which is, that's somebody who's not a key cog in an offense. And so it's like, even though their plays weren't, they didn't have a ton of plays, if you think you're going to play a guy with 22% of an offensive share, when you get guys like Le'Veon, guys like Carlos Hyde, guys like, LaShawn McCoy, who are like 50% of their team's plays going to them, I'll take that 10 times out of 10.
Let's shoot back to the lineups here now that Josh has said some really smart things. And by the way, I'm really happy that I knew what a Z-score was, because you guys are like database mavens, and I'm a complete fish when it comes to things like this. So I'm really proud of myself. But let's talk about what you did at wide receiver here, Josh.
Yeah, so this week I rolled out Alshon Jeffrey, Sammy Watkins, and Michael Thomas at wide receiver. And so my thinking there was with Jeffrey, he was one of the few wide receivers I felt that could go for 100-plus and 2 touchdowns in his matchup. And it wasn't just the revenge narrative there, although that factored into the decision somewhat. But again, it's just like he's one of the super high ceiling players that I see that hasn't had that super high ceiling breakout game this year. And I thought this would be a good spot for that. They were playing at home. I thought they would have the ball quite a bit where they could throw the ball. And Philadelphia has shown this season that when they do have a lead, they still throw the ball. They don't just, turtle and go to the run game. Peterson's happy to call really high percentage run or pass plays throughout the remainder of the game when they're ahead. So I thought Jeffrey was in a good spot there. I thought he was pretty fairly priced like Keenan Allen was the week before. And, he was in the low 6s. So, to me, Jeffrey was kind of a no-brainer for me and for cash. I thought he had a good floor. Watkins and Thomas, really, I was just trying to leverage a game. I thought that both teams could get into the 30s. And obviously that didn't work out because the Rams defense came to play today. And, obviously New Orleans offense, they kind of stunk out loud a little bit, I think. And so I didn't get what I wanted there. But Michael Thomas has been a guy, I've rostered him almost every single week this year because I think he has an incredibly high floor. Even though he's not scoring touchdowns, he's due for a breakout game just like Julio Jones. He hasn't had his 12 for 200 and 2 touchdown game yet this season. I thought this might be the week for it. And I thought, even if that didn't work out, I would get an 8 for 105 game out of him, which I would be totally tickled to death with at 7,200 as a floor game. And then Watkins, I just thought Watkins was too cheap. And, I had read on Saturday about what Greg Cosell said about the reads that the Rams make in this offense and what they want Goff to do, and that Watkins was getting wide ass open, and that because he was the third read in the passing game, he just wasn't getting the ball. So if they move Watkins into the first or second read in the offense on a majority of plays, I felt like at 4,900 that he would pay dividends. And in my opinion, I think he did.
So I had a lot of Watkins today. I had a lot of them in tournaments. He almost caught a second touchdown at the end of the game, just got batted away. Could have been something that made his game from good to absolutely great. I was, because of that thing that you were talking about, Josh, I was still a little suspect in cash. I wasn't quite sure I wanted to go there because, you're not quite sure. They're talking about keeping 3 receivers on one side. You have Watkins isolated on the backside a lot of the time. And I wasn't sure how much they'd switch that around. Obviously, Watkins got 9 targets. He ended up scoring. He had a fine game. I ended up going with Cooper Kupp in cash, which was fine. I was surprised to see he was 45% owned. Cooper Kupp
he was the chalk this week, and I'm really surprised by that. But the comfort thing that you mentioned, I think that's what played into the Kupp thing being so heavily owned. I think he was around 5,500 or something this week. I can't remember.
He was 5 even.
Okay, 5 even. So he's $100 more than Sammy Watkins. And obviously folks felt a lot safer with him as the play because he's been the second read the whole time, right? So They didn't feel his role would change, and it was safe volume. And I can't blame anybody for that. And he paid out on that, But It's I saw the number on his ownership, and I was a little bit surprised. I thought that folks would go other places with their money. I thought Watkins would be higher owned.
I was very surprised to see Kupp at that kind of ownership. I was honestly shocked.
Yeah.
So Nate, tell me a little bit. Go real fast. What did you do at receiver?
I also went Kupp. I think the reason I went Kupp over Watkins was not just the comfort factor, also just in cash games. Like ADOT matters to me a lot in cash games, and when you have similar guys, similar target projections, one with a much lower ADOT, much higher floor for me. And I thought Watkins, had the big play. I mean, Watkins' ADOT this year is like over 16, where Kupp's is like 8. And so in cash games, I will lean towards a guy who has a higher probability of catching those targets than somebody who might get 1 or 2 big plays, but could also go 7 targets and 1 reception. So that's why I went Kupp, and I think that's why most of the field went Kupp too. But I went Kupp, and then I fished it with Corey Davis. I just fished it. I mean, I should have got off of him after the Eric Decker news broke this morning that he was actually going to be the number 1. I didn't, and it was egregious.
That is super.
It was so fish. I literally was like, because I could have had Watkins. But
you were like, you know what? Do I want Watkins, or do I just want a guy who's like going to be covered up all the time against a team that's great against number 1 receivers and is probably not even going to be on the field that much with Decker? I get it. It makes a lot of sense when you put it that way.
My other guy was I went Fitz just because his price tag was so great.
Wait, what?
Wow.
Matchup.
Are you kidding?
No, you didn't.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I 100% had Fitz. He was my cash game. Like when I get a guy at 5.6K.
Wait. They didn't play Houston this week. They played Jacksonville.
Yeah.
You went with Fitz?
I went with Fitz. So.
Dude. Hey, wait, stand up. I want to see the size of your balls. That's incredible.
I want to see the size of your fins, bro. Flap them around a little bit.
He's got them hidden under the hood tonight. It's all.
Oh, my God. Nate, dude, how did I not know this?
I was tilting Fitz all day.
Oh, my God. What were you thinking?
I can't blame you. I'd be tilting them too.
So Fitz coming into the week had a 30% target, over a 30% market share of the targets with, and he was 5.6. And so it was just, I thought it was a no-brainer from a volume standpoint. I understand it's a tough matchup. DK priced in the tough matchup. Jalen Ramsey was ruled out up until like an hour before lock. And I was like, well, I mean, the guy ruled himself out.
Nate, you got to stop, dude. This is just, you're just digging yourself a hole. This is an egregious decision. What the hell?
No, I don't think Fitz was as bad as you think.
No, he absolutely was. This is like Davis Maddock level, like Brandon LaFell. No, it's not that bad.
Like, I could totally understand this if we knew that Ramsey wasn't going to play. But as soon as we saw Ramsey was going to play, I was like, I got to bug out of this situation. And it was iffy for me even before that when we thought Ramsey wasn't going to play, just because I thought that Jacksonville would just be in Gabbert's face all day, and I thought Gabbert would be hearing footsteps and just bailing out and not throwing it to Fitz, throwing it somewhere else, and not really allowing Fitz to develop his route. So
the thing you have to understand about Jacksonville, Nate, is it's not just one guy. It's not just like, Jalen Ramsey is such a good cover guy. That entire defense.
But Fitz moves around. He's in the slot. He's all over the place. Like, Fitz isn't a guy who's going to be shadowed. Like, it's not an Alshon Jeffrey type thing he's not a guy who's just going to run certain type of routes on the outside that you can lock down. Like, Fitz is an all over the field type guy who's going to get his 10 targets every game.
We have a new fish power ranking. Like, Nate is number 1. He's the Grand High Marlin, and then it's Andy Reid. I
feel more fishy about the Corey Davis than I do about the Fitz thing.
I think that's fair, but at least Fitzgerald's done something in this league, right? I mean, Corey Davis hasn't quite gotten there yet.
That is facts. That is 100% fact right there.
Hey, what are we going to do with Ricky Seals-Jones going forward? Because he appears to be the Blaine Gabbert Whoopie of choice.
He is. Oh, that is his Whoopie. I like that. That's 100% right. I mean, he left.
That's his practice squad homeboy right there.
That's it. He left the game with an injury, but if he's like,
he came back in.
Yeah, if he's in next week, man, we got some tough decisions to make.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, he's like he's what we wanted Jermaine Gresham to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's just a little bit more athletic Jermaine Gresham, but he's taking advantage of the plays that he's getting. I mean, he got 6 targets today and turned into 72 in a score, and his score looked good. I mean, he was wide-ass open.
Larry Fitzgerald right now is sitting at home, like, wishing he was Ricky Seals-Jones. That's clearly. Basically, yeah. I mean, I went Julio and Cooks and Cup, and, I mean, you're both just super fishy for not doing that. Let's talk about your tight end just debacle here, Josh. Let's just lay it all out there, bro. What happened here?
This is where everything went wrong this week, because I've had a lot of success running 2 tight ends in cash and double ups this year, and today I tinkered myself out of a real gem. You know, going into the weekend, I was pretty set. I was like, I'm doing Delaney Walker and I'm doing Rob Gronkowski. I'm going to stack those 2 guys. I love their volume. I think they're in the right spot. I think they'll smash. And then at 11:58 today, for some reason I just got the heebie-jeebies and I bailed on that stuff and ended up flipping over to Jared Cook and Travis Kelce, which is like the most suboptimal pairing you could possibly get if you're going to pay up at tight end and flex. But it was a lot of reasons why people played Hunt this week is like that's a smash spot. Kelce is a smash player. I mean, he smashed New York last week. He didn't get in the box, but I mean, he put up over 20 points. I'm thinking that's like his floor this week is 20 DK points. And then they go out and they give him 3 targets. And I'm just like, to me, that's when I know the offense is completely broken in Kansas City in a home game, and they can't get their stud tight end more than 3 targets. It's just like, I'm going to wash my hands at Kansas City until they do something.
Well, they couldn't get anybody involved. They didn't get Hunt involved. They didn't get Hill involved, and they didn't get Kelce involved. Like, how do you go an entire NFL football game against a terrible defense and completely not do – I mean, they talked about not being able to solve cover 2. Like, bro, cover 2's been around since Bart Starr was the best quarterback in the NFL. Yeah. Like, what's the problem, Andy Reid?
Yeah, and the thing that was frustrating, and that leads me back to Alex Smith being the source of the problem, is Kelce's running wide open on 80% of his pass routes. I mean, wide open. And half of the time at the end of his pass route, his hands are like this, like, you know, WTF, bro, where's the ball? And obviously Alex Smith is like looking down at the ground 3 yards in front of him because that's where he wants to throw it almost every single play.
Well, Kareem Hunt's right there. What's the problem? Throw it down.
Like, I mean, they're scheming plays for Charkandrick West before they're targeting Travis Kelce. It's just I don't understand what's going on in Kansas City, and it's just like, I'm done, man. I'm done with these clowns until they can figure it out and put Mahomes in the game.
What were you saying, Nate?
The play calling is just egregious.
It's all very bad. And that swap, I mean, I did a study on this a couple years ago, Josh, and I found that last minute tinkers lose points 96.4% of the time. It's just math.
I mean, the best lineup I've had this year was the lineup I did last week in Nashville when I was so hungover I couldn't see straight. And I just fired off my instinct and said, okay, I think these guys are going to hit this week. I'm not going to touch after this because my brain hurts. And I ended up putting almost – I'm sorry?
Sounds like you have a new Saturday night routine.
Yeah, clearly. I need to just power through to Sunday morning and just keep drinking until it's locked. And at that point, I'll be good.
Seems like the only reasonable thing to do. I mean, it's just the play.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the evolution of process we're talking about here.
You just internalize all the stuff your database spits out. You just internalize it, get some suds in you, beer 30, beer 45, and then boom.
Yeah,
make some smash lineups.
It's like Peter Griffin turned into like a piano savant when he's hammered.
right. All right, Nate, what'd you do at tight end, man?
I mean, I took the chalk and went Doyle which I couldn't believe he wasn't even more chalky. Doyle at 4,500 seemed like the lock.
What was he owned? I ended up not playing Doyle. I jumped down at Julius Thomas, but Doyle was like such a smash play.
Yeah, Doyle was only like 20, and I'm like, I don't know if people just got scared off by his dud last week, but it's like this dude is seeing some of the most consistent volume for a tight end, and he's like, I don't know. I love Doyle. I mean, it's clear that he has something there, and I think, you know, he's got one of the most clear-cut workloads of tight ends. I mean, at 4.5, it was like,
yeah. So in the giant $5 double up, he was 42% owned.
Oh, okay. I thought he was like 20%.
And that floored me. I was like 42% on a tight end. Seriously, I was shocked by that. I thought more people would go to Delaney Walker, but Delaney Walker only did.
The public was sharp.
Yeah, I mean, the Delaney Walker ended up being like 16%, And I thought he was a much better play than Doyle this week for his opportunity to get in the box.
I thought those were the plays. I thought Delaney and Doyle were the plays. I mean, those just, dude, it was obvious. And I mean, the game all set up really well. I thought that Delaney was a great GPP play because he hadn't scored yet this year.
Yep.
And he'd gotten so unlucky to do so. Like, I mean, you could call it unlucky, but he dropped a touchdown, an easy one last week where his week would have looked so much better. And we just talked about Corey Davis, and he was so widely owned. I don't know what his percentage ended up being, but it was just great leverage. Yeah, way too high.
Yeah, it was super high.
Way too high.
Yeah, in the big $5 double up, he was 36.3.
At least I'm not alone with my fishiness.
You're in the school of fish.
That's right. Yeah, you're all floating together. You know, there's strength in numbers, Nate.
Floating upside down in the fishbowl.
Yeah, y'all dead, man. I ended up I went to Julius Thomas. It was not something. Yeah, it was not. I didn't think Julius Thomas was a good play at all.
Were you the only person that played Julius Thomas this week?
Yeah, he was 2 point.
Register as a percentage owned.
He was 2.2% owned.
Like, did you have a bet or something? Were you contractually obligated to play Orange Julius this week?
I was joking this morning when I said he probably has Julius.
No, I hadn't. I mean, dude, I love the rest of my lineup so much that I really, I wanted
yourself.
Yeah, I wanted Julio so bad, and I wanted Cook so bad that at the end of it, I was just like, hey, he's 2,700. They're going to be down the whole time. I think he'll get a handful of catches. He went 5 for 52. It was fine. I think I probably luck boxed to get there. But
so why?
I build hundreds of lineups during the week just to kind of look at different constructions. I don't think I ever got close.
That's because you're a fish, Nate. I mean, you just got to jam in Julius Thomas. It was the play.
That was the play.
So how much was Thomas this week?
2,700.
He was 2,700?
Yeah.
Holy cow. So I saw a lot of folks talking about, what's his name? Austin Traylor, Denver backup tight end that everybody thought Lynch would be on, as kind of his Ricky Seals-Jones type would-be. And I haven't looked at the box score to see what that cat did. I'm going to guess it was zilch. But, really, to me, the cheapest you could have gone at tight end this week and felt good about it, other than obviously you with Julius Thomas, was Tyler Kroft for 3,900. And, he ended up paying out pretty good this week. And I probably should have just swallowed my pride and played him like I thought about really, really early in the week, looking at that matchup. And instead, I just decided to have diarrhea all over myself at tight end.
Hey, when you got to go, you got to go. Julius Thomas, the GOAT. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for the 10.2. It was great. Let's not talk about defense and special teams because ain't nobody care about that life. Let's just go over real fast a couple of things that we took away from this week. I know we've covered a lot of content here just in the course of discussing our lineups, but Nate, why don't you start us off, man? Just give me a nugget, something you took away from this week.
I want to dive a little bit closer into New Orleans backfield and figure out if these touches are going to continue to be consistent based on what we're seeing, or if Kamara is going to start getting more workload. Because it's clear that Kamara looks good, but I just don't even know if with Chris Thompson, they limit his workload intentionally, because they know that that efficiency can only be there on select plays. So I want to dive into that a little bit more. And then also Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch got an crazy amount of workload this week. He had 45% of his team's offensive plays this week. He had 3 targets and 26 carries. And I know it was quite a bit of carries, but I just want to look at that a little bit more.
It's crazy what happens for Oakland when game script's in their favor, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
They run the ball. And that's what they did last year when they had leads. They just pound the rock with Latavius Murray. So it's something probably to keep in mind if for some reason we think Oakland will actually have a lead going forward. It's probably going to be a spot to look at Marshawn, especially if he stays around the 4s like he was this week. He was at 4K.
That's the one thing I think that on DraftKings the inefficiency is in running backs who are in the 4K range. People get so obsessed with yards per carry efficiency, and that's why Joe Mixon was so under-owned this week. Oh, he's got 2. That stuff's not sticky. And so even though Marshawn Lynch had 26 carries, nobody's going to look twice at him because he averaged 2.6 yards per carry this week. But it was versus Denver. It's like, I don't know. I literally don't even look at yards per carry when it comes to that type of stuff just because it's so, and that's why Joe Mixon to me was such a great play this week. And he put up a great game. He had 5 yards per carry, and it's like, oh, that doesn't mean his last 5 weeks were worthless, but.
I think the other thing we're going to have to look out for is Mixon was a beneficiary of Cleveland run defense injuries, right? So Cleveland lost Ogba, and I can't remember the other cat that they lost this week on the run defense.
Jamie Collins a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So they lost 2 key cogs to their run defense this week. At least that's kind of what's conjectured, and Mixon showed that up. Right? So something we need to look at going forward is if those 2 guys, or at least one of them, is out of the lineup for Cleveland's defense, then we probably need to look at them as a target for the run game or whoever's playing them. Whereas before, I think a lot of Mixon's price was due to the fact that they were playing the Cleveland run defense, who's number 1 in run defense this year, I believe. Yeah. I think DVOA had him there, and my adjusted metrics had him pretty close to number 1 in run defense. So if DraftKings doesn't catch on to that, let's say going into the next week, and I can't recall who Cleveland's playing this week, but if there's let's say a lower price running back that we think has good volume potential, there's probably somebody to target going into this week that'll give us some salary relief. So I think that's a situation to monitor.
Well, and the other thing about that, I think what Nate said is really true. Regardless of the efficiency that you're looking at here, he's a guy that's been getting work in the passing game. He's been getting the goal line work, and he was a massive home favorite. At the end of it, dude, if he runs for 3 yards a carry, great, but you're going to get 20-plus touches for whatever he was, 4.4. And I have to thank Nate for this because I really hadn't considered him that much. And then, Nate and I were texting back and forth, and Nate really sold me on him. And I ended up getting out of McKissick to get to Mixon. And obviously that worked out really well, but I think the process was fine as well. Whereas McKissick, it's like, okay, I think he's going to get 5 targets and 5 to 10 carries, but Mixon is going to get 20 plus. And that just made a whole lot more sense for 400 more. So gotta say thanks, Nate. You are sharp every once in a while.
Yeah, now I'm kind of sad I didn't talk to you so you could talk me out of McKissick and doing something smart. Instead, I developed these skills and started looking for water to dive into.
I will throw this out there. We talked about Kamara. We talked about KC. I think the New England situation, it's like we get amnesia every single week, right? And we feel like we know what's going to go on. I really like Dion Lewis too this week, Josh. I had a decent amount of Dion in GPPs, and then Burkhead gets 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And everybody's off of Gronk because he hadn't been used that much the last couple of weeks. And it's like, they're saving Gronk. They have their playoff spot wrapped up. They're not going to send him on all these routes over the middle and this and that. Dude, and then Gronk smashes. It's like the moment you think that you know what New England's going to do, you don't. And there's actually probably just so much equity in just doing the opposite of what makes sense for New England to do that, just play Gronk and Burkhead and you won so much money this week. You have no idea what to do with it.
Yeah, and honestly, even with Dion Lewis, at 4,800, you're pretty happy with his outcome. He scored over 15 points.
Absolutely.
That's not terrible. Really, that's like I mentioned earlier. You compare Tevin Coleman and Dion Lewis this week at a 1,700 price difference, and they had the exact same projection, in my opinion. Same touch volume, whatever, and they had the same game script going to this game, looking for it. So, to me, it's like it was a no-brainer. I'm going to get off Coleman. I'm going to play Dion Lewis because it's the same thing at $4,800. So
and Mixon was only, just going back to him, he was 12% in the double up I'm looking at, the giant, I think the 25, maybe the 10. But yeah, that was great ownership. Dion Lewis, massive home favorite. Bad team. I really like Lewis as well, and I know that Silva did too, and Silva's always smart. So let's do this. Let's jump over. Let's wrap this show up by talking a little.
I have one other thing to mention. Just one other takeaway. Dede Westbrook, probably most people aren't going to look at much because he didn't necessarily go off. But I was really encouraged. He had 10 targets. He had 74. He had a weighted opportunity rating, which is Josh Hermsmeyer metric of. He was top 15 on the week in Whopper, and he had over 100 air yards. And so that was really encouraging to see that he's actually getting that. We've seen his preseason that he is a talented guy, and I think he's somebody to look at going forward if Jacksonville's going to be passing.
Oh snap! I didn't even know. I didn't even see that he had 10 targets.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, he was not Patrick Peterson covered, right? So that was that was the thing. He was the beneficiary, and that's kind of what I mean. I think that was the reason to play him going into this week, notwithstanding his $3,600 price, was the expected volume that would be shoveled his way if it was a competitive game.
Yeah, because Marquise Lee got covered up 1 for 13 on 2 targets.
Yeah.
Right, and we're talking about those little things in game making a difference. We're talking about Marshawn Lynch. Michael Crabtree gets tossed out early in the game. Amari Cooper leaves with a concussion, I think, in the second quarter. I think, and positive game script, that led a lot to Lynch's volume. Obviously, we don't know the status of those guys moving forward, but
how sick is the Talib troll of getting the gold chain again?
My grandma gave me that chain.
Sick, the trolliest of trolls.
It's amazing too, because that squabble goes all the way back to Dallas, to their high school days, when they faced off against each other in high school. So I mean, it's like this is a long-standing squabble. It's fantastic.
That's amazing. I mean, who owns Crabtree harder? Is it Richard Sherman or is it Talib? I mean, that's a
gotta be stealing his goal twice.
Two chains versus one ring.
Yeah.
It's tough. Let's talk a little bit about this 2-game slate. For the prime time, we have Houston at Baltimore tonight. Baltimore, last time I looked, was 7.5-point favorites. And then we have Washington at Dallas on Thursday. Dallas at home, 2.5-point home favorites, which, as bad as they've been playing, I was a little surprised that they're favored by that.
Yeah, that just reeks of like a sucker play to me, to be honest. I can't get behind that. I think Washington could wipe the floor with those guys because they played a competitive game against Dallas last time with 0 offensive line. And they managed to stay in that pretty well. So now it's to me, I want to get in on the Thursday, Monday, the long slate, just to play the Washington defense, because I think that they could very well rack up, let's say, 5 or 6 sacks and maybe a couple of turnovers just based on how bad Dallas has looked. I mean, they look completely out of sorts. And I think a lot of it is probably coaching and game day management. And a lot of it also is, it looks like Dak is he's hearing footsteps right now. I think he hears Adrian Claiborne coming for him every single snap is what it seems like.
I think he actually hears Tony Romo coming down from the booth.
He's going to take his job, dude.
Tony Romo's coming back.
I mean, I will say this. I had a great Sunday, but I got murked on Thanksgiving, and a big part of getting murked on Thanksgiving was thinking that Tyron Smith coming back for Dallas was going to change things a lot, right? I wasn't that concerned about Zeke. They'd been running fine without Zeke, but Tyron Smith came back, and it didn't help at all, man. Dak is shook as hell. So yeah, I'm with that. At quarterback here on this slate, I mean, Savage, Flacco, I mean, these guys are like unplayable to me. I mean, is there any game theory reasons why you might take a shot on one of these guys?
I would look at Flacco just because the Houston pass defense is bad. They're on the road at Baltimore, and it's good to see that Woodhead is back in the lineup. I thought Woodhead looked pretty good in what film I watched of him last week. He was targeted pretty heavily, pretty early, just like he was in the first week of the season. So I think having a player like that back in the Baltimore offense may actually help Flacco to open up things around him with Macklin and with Wallace. So to me, I think if you're going to play a guy in a tournament, it's probably going to be Flacco just to get salary relief to go some other places. But otherwise, I don't know how you can't play Cousins.
I could see that. I agree with having a ton of Cousins. I mean, Dak might be the super contrarian play at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think Dak would be the contrarian one, but I think the other two guys, it's like I don't know how you could play them. I can't see a case for it.
Yeah, there's I don't care if I knew that Savage was going to be 1% owned. I still couldn't play him. I still couldn't do it. There's a million
other places to diversify. You don't need to do it at quarterback for playing a guy who's going to be minus 5 to 10 points of equity on somebody else. Don't do that.
Yeah. All right, so there's some interesting stuff going up at running back here. Nate, who would you think is the first guy you're jamming in at the running back position?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to be an interesting spot. It depends on kind of what you're trying to do. I think if you're trying to just stack that Wednesday or the Thursday game, I think Samaj Pirine is the play. We saw the volume and things like that. So that's kind of where I would be.
I agree with that. I think that Pirine, I mean, he's also seeing some work in the passing game, which you like. Not a ton of it, but enough to.
But it's enough for his price tag and on this slate.
Yeah, and he smashed 2 games in a row of over 100 yards. Josh, what about for you? Who stands out besides Pirine that you think would be pretty solid here? Like, talk about Woodhead. He only got, I think, 13 snaps last week, but they had a super positive game script. Mm-hmm. They also rate to have a super positive game script here, but if he plays more snaps, do you think he's viable?
I think on this slate, if I think that the Baltimore's going to be ahead, and I do, and I think they're going to end up squashing Savage and getting and holding the ball a lot. To me, it's going to be Alex Collins. One thing that was very positive for me on watching Alex Collins is they are targeting him in the pass game. It's not frequent, but it's enough that I can probably rest assured that he's going to get, let's say, 2 to 3 catches a game on maybe 4 or 5 targets. And his carry volume has been fantastic. I mean, he's getting the ball 15 to 20 times a game. He's getting in the end zone. I think Baltimore's probably going to be in the end zone, 3 or 4 times in this game. To me, that makes me lean Collins at 4,800, where I can do a lot of things at wide receiver.
I dig on that too. Alf Morris was a dude who just crushed me on Thanksgiving. I had 100% Alf. I was like, oh, it's all happening. Like, Alf's going to get 20 plus carries. Yeah. And then it just didn't happen, bro. It just didn't happen. So I might try to double down on my losses by going contrarian there, just in case Dallas does some good things. I think there's a lot of interesting plays here at the wide receiver position. I know that Nate is going to lock in Hopkins right away because that's such a Nate thing.
I think lineups just become auto-loaded with Hopkins on this slate. Like on DraftKings, it just happens.
Yeah. His volume is so ridiculous. And, I mean, he was not even that widely owned when he faced the Rams, I think 2 weeks ago, and he smashed, or maybe it was last week.
I just can't see a case to not play. I just can't see a case to not play him.
Yeah, he was facing Arizona last week and Patrick Peterson, and he did nine targets, 4 for 76 and a touch. He was great. I don't see this matchup as, obviously Baltimore's good, but I don't see this matchup as harder than that individually.
He has the best volume in the game, of any wide receiver. Period. And on a slate like this, you have to play him. Yeah,
he's got like Antonio Brown's volume and just not Antonio Brown's skill, but he's still pretty good.
I mean, really, who cares about a .25 racer on 18 targets?
Yeah.
Right.
He literally has a 34.95% target share in the year with a 41.4% of the air yard share. I mean, it's just is unbelievable volume.
I'm also pretty pumped on Jamison Crowder. We've seen slot receivers just smoking the hell out of Dallas. And you look at his target numbers here in the second half, last 4 games, 10 targets, 8, 11, and 13. I just those 2 guys I'm just jamming in and trying to differentiate elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, last week was really interesting because, everybody's just dying on this Washington team. So to see him get those 10 targets last week, he had 141 reception yards and it was only on 91 air yards, so he obviously had a super efficient game, but it was encouraging to see, Cousins look his way so much. So
yeah.
So obviously there's going to be a need for a 3rd receiver, a 4th receiver. Josh, who are some guys perhaps on the Ravens side that you think are good? Because Macklin and Wallace, I think they're both intriguing, but I don't really know how to parse them out.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to parse them out either. With Woodhead's return, I don't know if he vacuums away some of Macklin's target volume, because it seems like, and I had to go back and look at his distro, but it looks like Macklin's target volume is a lot closer to the line of scrimmage than Wallace. Wallace's ADOT, Nate, you can probably pull this off the top of your head, but I think Wallace's ADOT is probably like in the 11, 12, maybe 13 range.
Yeah, Wallace is right now at 12.7 and Macklin's at 9.4.
Yeah, so, based on that, I'm probably going to lean Wallace just because he's being targeted down the field. We know Houston can be had deep. And I think that, Baltimore still takes shots downfield. I mean, Joe Flacco sucks, but he still throws downfield. And Houston's bad enough that Wallace can take advantage of that. So, for me, as a tournament play, I'm going to look at Wallace. I think as a cash play, I'm going to either look at Macklin or I might even look at Bruce Ellington with Fuller being out.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I'm not quite sure. Is Fuller for sure going to be out?
Well, he's got the little O next to his name on DraftKings, so I assume that. I think I read earlier today that he's already been ruled out. So
yep, he has.
But it cannot be overstated how bad this Houston secondary is.
So, and they were so good last year too.
Yeah, and their pass rush is toast. Like they can't get to the passer anymore.
You lose Boye and you lose Watt and you lose Merciless. It's over.
Yeah,
you're in trouble. So
I mean, we saw Miami. Miami couldn't get to the passer against Baltimore, and Flacco, as Flacco can only do, pick them apart, right, in the Flacco-esque manner. So, Houston's kind of in that regime like Miami is on the defensive side. So to me, both of those receivers could just totally slice and dice Houston on the secondary side.
Nate, you got any other wide receivers here that you're pumped on?
I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, you're always going to try to take a flyer on somebody. I think potentially depending on the Houston situation with Fuller, looking at Ellington.
Okay, so moving to tight end, I'm 100% going to chase my losses on Thanksgiving, and I'm probably going to play 100% Vernon Davis. Oh my God.
That hurts so bad.
What the actual F? Oh my God.
Back to the well.
Unreal.
Dude, I mean, I was so glad I was not watching this game. I was like having dinner with my family at this point because I would have just like crapped a brick if this happened. Like
Thanksgiving's already the worst holiday of the year, but that made it even.
it's just so bad. Like, what happened? Why was Niles Paul playing and Vernon Davis not? I just don't get it at all. Anybody have answers?
The Bizarro Giant showed up. That's what happened. Bizarro Giant showed up.
Unfreaking believable. I'm still tilted.
He literally had one target.
I thought I was so sharp. I'm like, I did the I did the Josh ADHD, and I went double tight end, Ingram and Vernon Davis, and I didn't even watch. I just mic dropped and went and had dinner, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna come back from dinner. I'm gonna have some pie. I'm gonna look at my lineups and be like, I'm rich. I'm rich.
Lit. I had the Rudolph Davis stack, and I was like, after Rudolph crushed, I was like, man, I'm winning all the money on Thanksgiving. It's going to be great.
He was already streaking naked down the street.
Yeah. It was embarrassing. I had to put my pants back on. I mean,
it's very bad. Do you guys see – I mean, the tight ends on this slate are really poor. Is there anybody else here, Josh, that you think is a halfway decent play?
I think Witten's probably worth a look. His price is a little bit high for my liking based on what he is probably expected to get by. He's got a low ceiling, but I think he'd get in the box. One of the interesting guys I see on the slate, if you want to go rock bottom minimum, Steven Anderson, with Fuller being out and with Baltimore being good on defense, I might look for a secondary player in the Houston offense if I think any of them are going to put up anything. And Steven he's a super athletic tight end. And at $2,500, he might be worth, just a few percentage points in your tourney lineups, just a little bit of access to him because he can put up, 3 or 4 catches for 60 yards and maybe get in the box. He might be a guy that just kind of sneaks in because he's flying under the radar.
Nate, anybody that you like here?
No, I mean, it's tough, especially because Baltimore mixes it around. I kind of want to pick on Houston, but, I mean, you got Watson, Max Williams is in there, Nick Boyd, like – all these guys get targeted. It's like, what are you going to do?
So here's one of the worst things that I did. So I did this solo pod last week because y'all left me alone. And I was so regretful because I did not mention that Davis played Ben Watson in cash last week. And not like as his tight end. He went double tight end and Watson in his flex.
Agree.
Oh my God! How did I not mention that?
Wait.
DraftKings should suspend him. Do the.
I didn't think DraftKings would allow you to flex Watson. Like, I didn't think that was available. I thought he would be grayed out in the flex.
That is egregious.
It should have been. It would have saved Davis a lot of money, man.
I mean, it's like, does he need to click the casual checkbox up at the top that won't let you make that decision anymore?
Self-exclude for the rest of the season.
I mean, the nice thing is DraftKings has now let Davis back in the beginner contests. So that's –
Oh, wait. So Davis is playing the long game here. Like,
that's right.
This is purposeful. See, he's sharp, man. He's super sharp. He's always trying to, change the game. I like that.
Thinking one step ahead.
Yeah.
Defense and special teams. Obviously, Baltimore looks like the top play. Josh, you said that you really liked Washington. I know it's hard to say right now the ownership percentages you'll have, but how do you kind of weight those two against each other?
I would probably put it about 70-30. I think, if I were going to spread them across a bunch of lineups. You know, the thing about Washington is they do get after the passer, and this being the second matchup of their divisional matchups of the year, that they're very low scoring historically in that second divisional matchup, especially in the NFC East. And Washington knows Dallas. I mean, and here's the thing about Dallas is a pretty open book. They run a very, let's say a narrow set of plays. They don't do very much creatively with their offense. So, a team that plays them a lot like Washington knows them up and down. They know what they're going to do. So I think they're going to be able to get after Dak. And if Dak's hearing footsteps, like it looks like he has the past 3 weeks, I think they could just totally tear him up.
Josh, you make such a good point about the second time playing teams. I don't have the stats in front of me, but there is a noticeable scoring decrease when division teams play each other for the second time. I don't know how you come up with things that are so sharp and yet make a lineup like you made this week. I mean, that's, it's an amazing dichotomy. That's the yin and the yang.
It is. Well, I mean, again, that's what happens when you outthink yourself for a solid 2 hours before lock. I mean, really, I should have just walked away and gone to the candy store or something. But instead, I went to the pet store and decided to crawl in one of the aquariums.
Nate, do you have any defense special teams takes here?
No, I mean, I think that summarized it.
Yeah.
Well.
You guys, this was super fun. Josh, thank you so much for coming and doing this. We might just have to get rid of Davis Maddock. You're just so much better than he is at this. You are Rob Gronkowski and he's Ben Watson. Yeah, this was embarrassing. This is like when Aaron Rodgers comes back and then you see how bad Brett Hundley really was. That's kind of the situation that's happening here.
We didn't realize how bad it was. We just got used to having this anchor carrying us down, and now it's like it's lifted, and you're like, didn't even realize it. We just got
Stockholm syndrome is real.
Well, you guys, this has been really fun. Again, Josh, thank you so much for being here. I hope that everybody listening had a fantastic week, made a little bit of coin. For the two guys that did not play Julio in cash, Josh at Fantasy ADHD, Nate at Nate Nohling. This is Sammy Reid, the guy who did play Julio Jones in cash, signing off at Sammy Reid FI. Take care, and we'll talk to you next week.